Good evening and welcome to the November 1st, 2016 meeting of the Plymouth Board of Selectmen. Please stand and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there anyone wishing to address the board under public comment? Seeing no one, then we'll go to the town manager's report. Mrs. Arrighi.
Thank you. Well, the first exciting news that we found out that we could announce this evening is the Energy and Environmental Affairs Office, through Secretary Beaton, is announcing the Dam and Seawall Awards. And once again, Plymouth is a recipient of those grant awards. So as we just went to the most recent town meeting and spoke about two projects that we wanted to do with seawalls, we have been notified that we will receive a $93,563 grant for the design and environmental permitting for the reconstruction and upgrading of that 900 linear feet we had talked about at the Plymouth Long Beach parking lot. In addition, we received $810,993 that will repair and reconstruct portions of 720 linear feet of the retaining wall fronting the seawall located at Long Beach along Warren Avenue. So David Gould had felt pretty confident that we would do well on those grants, and it's really nice to see this quickly after town meeting we were notified of those. Also in my report, I gave you an update on the airport. Although that project was completed over the summer, I know as many of you drive around, it still appears like some landscaping work or work is being done. So I did want to give you a full update on how we have balanced those runways, and the airport manager is already pleased with how operations are going. The second item in my report talks about the donation of that 20 to 40 foot Christmas tree. Mr. Bubbins, after I wrote my report, did let me know that he believes he has found somebody to provide us with that tree, and that's always good news. It takes a while to find that each year. The Water Forum is coming up on November 10th. I provided a flyer to you as backup for that. That is the League of Women Voters. It is open to the public, and it will be speaking about all infrastructure and water needs in the town of Plymouth. And finally, I just wanted to, and I did forget, we'll get you the latest numbers tomorrow. The voter turnout has been excellent with the early voting. Every day in Town Hall has been very busy. Town Clerk Pizer is tired, but very pleased to see these results, and I will have those numbers for you in the morning. Give you another couple updates, things that the board has wanted to know a little bit about, but you also wanted a presentation on. Item number 7 speaks about our water management permit renewal. That is something that's going to change the amount of water that we can really use in the town of Plymouth, and that's going to be something we'll need to educate the public on. But it's also something that I think that we need to work more closely with DEP on, because I'm not sure in this kind of tourist community with the demand that we have in the summer, we would be able to stick to the water withdrawal they want to allow us. And finally, some good news on the parking deck. Some of the work was done in that parking lot to see if there were any issues, archaeological issues or any issues with the materials. It was very sandy. They don't see any problems there, and that is good news that we can move forward. It does appear that we may bid that project, though. We had originally spoken about the parking deck and doing it as some kind of change order. Prices are coming a little higher than we thought from the contractor that's on site, so that may be something that we actually go out to bid on. It will delay us slightly, but we'll work on that time schedule and get that information to you. And that is my report this evening.
Questions or comments for the town manager? Mr. Provenzano.
Just, Madam Manager, I did read the correspondence regarding the water, and I'm sure these are issues that are going to be dealt with at that water forum, and are issues that apparently they're going to be with us for some time, but it sounds like the state is basically setting artificial limits on our water draw, not based upon technological grounds, not based upon the real environmental concerns with our sole source aquifer, which remains healthy and viable, but in a way that could really impact growth in the town in the coming years. So this is something that I'm glad to see that we're vigorously not challenging so much as bringing to bear the true information, because it certainly seems to me that they're using sort of a cookie-cutter approach that might make sense in other regions of the state that don't have the incredible water resources that we enjoy.
Yes, Mr.
So
Page.
the public is aware, I'm sure it's probably on the website, but the water ban has been lifted, correct?
It has been lifted. We put it on, I believe, Facebook, and we tweeted it. We used our usual locations to put out that information, but that is finally lifted. We still have some of our regular restrictions in place from the Darby well, but those we're used to being able to accommodate.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. We now have a public hearing. In accordance with Chapter 138 of the Massachusetts General Laws as amended, notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held at the Plymouth Town Hall, 11 Lincoln Street, Plymouth, Massachusetts, on Tuesday, November 1, 2016, at 7:05 p.m., to consider the application for a transfer of an annual all-alcohol package store license from Plymouth Liquors, Inc., DBA Liquor and More, 35 Home Depot Drive, Jennifer Tewksbury, manager, to Patriot Spirits, DBA Liquor and More, 35 Home Depot Drive, Jennifer Tewksbury, manager. Description of premises will be as follows: one-story cement block building containing 4,100 square feet, 2 entrances and exits. Anyone wishing to be heard on this matter should plan to attend this meeting. I now declare the hearing open and ask if the petitioner is present.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Dan Chamberlain. I represent Liquor and More. You may recall back in the spring, filed applications that were approved on the change of manager and updated the shareholders. We're now in phase 2 of a corporate restructure. We are moving all of our stores into one corporate entity. The manager is the same. The shareholders are the same. The percentage of ownership is the same. And the reason for doing this is that it's easier to ensure the operation as a whole. It allows us to scale and offer better employee benefits and raise capital and financing. This is actually the 5th hearing I've done on this. We've been approved for various phases of the corporate restructure in our Dennis, Wellfleet, Bourne, and Yarmouth stores. And I will entertain any questions the board has at this time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to be heard on this matter? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Questions or comments from the board? Then I await your action.
Motion approved.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the request as presented. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It is unanimous. Also, there is a request to pledge the license. So a motion is in order, and it is to pledge their license and inventory to the Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod. To the motion, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board. Have a good evening.
The next item on the agenda is a lease renewal request by Mr. John Scaglarini. Mr. Scaglarini. Excuse me, before you start, I need to just inform the public that the board voted not to renew this lease, and that is the purpose of your coming before the board this evening.
That's correct, Ken.
Yes.
I'm not here to reapply or however you want to put it. I'm not here for that. I'm here tonight. I'm disappointed, obviously. And I'm here because I don't feel like I was granted the courtesy of a discussion prior to this vote. And some of you don't know me. So get comfortable, because I'm going to take a little time here. I hope you don't mind, but you folks...
Yes, is the microphone on?
Yeah, I believe it is, sir.
Yeah, it is.
Okay?
I can hear you, John.
John, it's fine. Some of you don't know me, so I'm going to go through a little history. I'm going to tell you my history not to... Is it better? Is it better, John? Can you hear me okay? I'll gladly come out there and talk. Can I do that?
No, the microphone
Okay.
Actually broadcast it back to people at home.
I don't do this often, so it's
It's all right, Joe.
it's awkward for me.
Take your time.
My name is John Scaglarini, John Lewis Scaglarini. I was born and bred here in Plymouth. Lived here my entire life. Went through the Plymouth school systems. Got an associate's degree in arboriculture in Stockbridge, and came back to Plymouth and went to work. And I've been here pretty much ever since. I run a small business. It's difficult in any town to run a small business. I employ 3 people, sometimes 4, depending on the season. We work hard. We take a lot of pride in our work. I'm a very wealthy man. I'm wealthy in the sense that I enjoy what I'm doing. I have a passion for what I'm doing, and I enjoy it thoroughly. I still climb trees at 61 years old, and I have no business doing that, but I love it. And that makes me a very wealthy man. Monetarily, nope. Green industry is not exactly the wealthiest business. And I've struggled over the years, and that's been evident here. We'll talk about that a little bit. But as part of the community that I live in, I've tried to do my part. Skag Tree has tried to do their part. We have a holiday called Arbor Day. It's often called Earth Day. Tree Man's holiday. We do Arbor Day projects. I've been involved in Arbor Day projects with Southeast Mass tree wardens and Mass arborists for 20 years. We've done work on the waterfront. I know it's not directly associated with the town of Plymouth. It was actually state property. It's still Plymouth. It's the community. We had huge crews in there, cranes, pruning crews, removal crews, stump grinding crews, and planting crews. We probably did between $20,000 and $30,000 worth of work over a 2-year period on Arbor Day down there. I enjoyed it so much that after that I stopped working so much with Mass arborists and had our own little Arbor Day projects here in Plymouth. This is my town. This is my hometown. This is where I want to be. So we've done work for nonprofit groups. We've worked for the Sparrow House. We've done a day's work for the Sparrow House, the Harlow House, the Howland House, the Hedge House. There's talk about some cemetery work in the future. But that's, in my opinion, that's what you do when you live in a community. You contribute what you can. I can't offer much. I can offer some good work. So I do that. I've served on some boards here in this town, on some committees. I was on the Plymouth Town Forest Committee for 7 years. I chaired that for 5. I was on the Plymouth Beach Advisory Committee prior to my life out on the beach for 7 years as well. And I chaired that for 2. I believe it was 2, not 3 years. And I served on the Concom for 2 terms, 6 years. And I'm going to add here, I've been quiet my whole time with this, but I'm not going to be quiet anymore. When it was time for the reappointment on the Concom, you always vote in the incumbent, unless there's a reason. He's been tired, he hasn't shown up to meetings, it's been problematic in some way, shape, or form. I wasn't that with Concom. I was dedicated to Concom, and I thought I contributed well. But I was voted out during reappointment, and I was voted out by a gentleman, nice gent, fine gent. I brought him upstairs immediately after the hearing and introduced him. And his credentials were that he owned cranberry bogs in Halifax, I believe it was Halifax, and he was familiar with the Wetlands Protection Act because of that. And I thought that was an odd vote for me to be voted out on that. And some of you were here. I say that just because I feel there's a certain personal issue here, and I take offense to it. That said, I'll move on, okay? Let's talk about the beach and my history on the beach. It was owned by a gentleman named Al Fugazi. Colorful character, no doubt. he decided he'd had enough and he moved to Maine. And he had the property up for sale with a 10-year lease arrangement. Knowing that I would probably never be able to live on the water in the industry that I was getting involved in, I rented it from him till he sold it. That was the intent. And I was there for about a year and a half. And the price kept going down, but it was way out of my range. And then the no-name storm hit, the perfect storm. And it did significant damage to that beach, did significant damage to many things, and it did significant damage to that house. Al had a good insurance policy. He made out very well with it. He kept the money and dropped the price of the house significantly. I talked to him. We came to an agreement, and I bought the house. I had to borrow money from my family for a down payment, and Al held the paperwork for me. He mortgaged it for me because no one would. No bank would, because I didn't own the property. All told, it cost me about $100,000 to buy that property, just under. And I worked hard to make that work. I worked very hard. I was proud to own a house, and I worked hard at it. Running a small business made it tough. Cash flow wasn't always there, and I was late on my taxes numerous times. Badly late. And I apologized then for it, and I'll apologize again for it. Had I known now had I known then what I know now, we wouldn't be here. At the end of the day, throughout this whole mess that's here, my bad. My bad. If I had paid my taxes on time, we wouldn't be here. However, the way it's been handled, a few things have to be said. So I'm going to give you the history of that. When I bought that house, yes, I was late numerous times. And at a certain point, Melissa called me in. She called me into her office. And I'd never met Melissa. I'm sure you remember that meeting. And she read me the riot act. I was embarrassed. I was humbled. I was angry. She was mean. But I got the message. And I think from that time on, I made some improvements. Was I perfect? No. But I made some improvements. My lease came due, 10 years. It came due. And I, again, contacted Melissa, and she passed me on to the assistant town manager, who I believe at the time was Mark Silva. And was it Mark? Patrick O'Brien. Thank you. Sorry about that. And Patrick told me to write a letter to the board. He would get it okayed or get the nod from the environmental manager, who was David Gould, and would get a date before you folks. And a week or so later, he called me and said, yes, David Gould is in approval. Everything's good. You come before the board next Tuesday night between 7 and 7:30, just like this. And this was, 6 years ago, I guess, 5-6 years ago. So that was good. And I called David Gould because I always talk to David in the spring, curious about what's going to happen in the spring, what the anticipation is for endangered species, any changes on the beach. And I talked to David. I thanked him for his approval. And he said everything's good, expecting a good year, everything is fine. That was on a Thursday. I had called him on a Wednesday. He got back to me on Thursday. The meeting was Tuesday night, and I was comfortable. I was relaxed. I was excited about it. And I got a phone call Tuesday afternoon about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 hours before the meeting. And it was a close friend of mine. And he told me, he said, Skag, you're going to lose your house tonight. And I didn't believe him. I said, no, Reg, it's not the case. I'm up to renew the lease. It's all been approved. Everything is good. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm going to be doing. He said, no, Skag, I just got off the phone. You're going to lose your lease. lease. There's been some coercion in the board, there's been some talk, and you're going to lose your lease. I said, Wedge, you're wrong. It's all set. He said, I just got off the phone. I hate to point fingers, but I'm going to point a finger, John. Because he told me you were bragging about how you were going to take my house.
I would dispute that. I would dispute that.
I'm sure you would. And interpretations can be taken differently. But that's what he told me. And don't smirk. It's not funny.
Not smart.
Okay. That's what he told me. And I was devastated. I called Melissa and asked her, I heard this. She said, yes. We got it continued, and then the whole situation developed with attorneys, town council. Cost me thousands, cost you folks thousands. And we came to the agreement, finally, which I wasn't happy about, but I had to take it because I didn't have many choices, of 5 years with a potential automatic renewal. I can live with that. I can do that. And we did. In reading that lease, it states somewhere on there that it will be automatically renewable provided you make your payments in a timely manner. And a couple pages beyond that, it speaks to eviction. If you're more than 60 days late, eviction takes place immediately. Being somewhat simple at times, not doing my homework, and not really understanding timely manner, I was late half dozen or so times. A week, 2 weeks, 35 days, 36 days, no more than that. Because in the back of my head, I had 60 days marked. That wasn't going to happen. But the timely manner, I didn't pay enough attention, plain and simple. That seemed a little vague to me, so I didn't bite on that. In 2015 or 2015, you folks had a meeting, recognized the fact that I had been late, and a motion was made to nullify the automatic renewal and end the lease in 2017, the spring of 2017. And I believe the motion was not seconded by anybody on this board. And another motion was made to just end the automatic renewal. And that passed, rightfully so. No problems with that. You're right. I was wrong. So that made me think. Melissa again called me in the office to let me know. She didn't just write me a letter and stick it in the mail. She called me in, and I appreciated that. I want you to know that. And she explained to me, Skag, this is the situation. I think I got it at that point. Finally, I got it. And from that point on, and I think that was the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, I have been on time. I'm actually ahead on my taxes. And I don't know the town a cent in terms of that. So I've made an effort. I think a pretty damn good effort. And it's ahead right now as we speak. So why would this board vote to take my lease? I know there's this grand plan for Plymouth Beach. And let's talk about that a little bit. When we had litigation with attorneys, we had discussions with David Gould, John, Melissa. We had meetings. And the biggest issue that I got out of it was parking. If they ended the lease, I would be forced to tear down my house that I paid for and lived in for over 20 years for parking. And I think they claimed they could put in 12 to 16 parking spots. We hired Bill Shaw, an engineer, a very well-respected engineer, who looked at the layout and determined with radiuses and whatnot that you could park 6 vehicles on my property. And those, it's code. Town has to apply to that. And those dimensions are based on a parking lot like Stop and Shop or something, not sand with SUVs and large pickup trucks. Besides the point, 6 parking spots. 6 parking spots. You're going to take my house away for 6 parking spots because I've been late in the past, over a year ago, year and a half, 30-something days. Doesn't seem to make sense to me. But let's go further with it, because I love that beach. I'm passionate about that beach as well. And if this board, David Gould, Melissa, could prove to me, to show me why taking my house off of there and getting me out of there would benefit this community or that beach, I'd be the first one to put my hand up and say, you got it right, guys. I got to go. I'd be the first one. I'd say, how do we do it? Let's make this work. Throughout this whole thing, I've stayed in communication with this town. I haven't dodged you guys. But parking. Okay. 6 parking spots for the use of what? Recreation. People, that's 6 more cars in the summer that could come, 6 more families could come and recreate on the beach. If they parked in my yard, they would have to walk out to get to the main beach across the roadway to the main beach, which has been closed off during the summer season for the last 7 years because of endangered species. It's great habitat out there. It's been blocked off. So they would have to walk to the crossover or walk south to the day parking area to access the beach. Now, they did a couple of years ago have a path down the middle. They took that away 2 years ago. It hasn't been in existence. There were 3 parking spots. You could squeeze in 4 if you were good, if they were Subarus. Directly across from my house. They've eliminated that the entire season for the last 2 years. So, parking. Why is I don't understand this. Then they said, well, they could use the pier. I have a pier at my house which is in disrepair. They could rebuild the pier. The pier. It would cost quite a bit. But you could. And they said people could land on their boats, access the beach by that way. People could fish off the pier. If you look at a nautical chart that's a mud flat, there's barely 2 hours of water for that dock either side of high tide. So the timing for boaters would have to be key, and many boaters would be stranded there, and that's why I don't have a boat there, and that's why Alpha Ghazi didn't have a boat there. He tried to lobster out of there, and it didn't work because he didn't have enough water. You're talking a couple feet at high tide around that pier. It doesn't work. Fishing, no fish in a foot of water. Fishing's not really an option, but for a small window of opportunity. They also said clamming. The beds were going to open soon, which they did. And you know what? It's an ideal place to park cars for clamming. It's an ideal spot. Problem with that is twofold. If you do have an area like that, and it's accessed repeatedly, you will get trails in the marsh. Conservation has always fought to protect the marsh. You will get trails. I don't utilize the marsh. You don't see trails from. I've been there for 20-something years. You can go down there, you'll see no trails through the marsh. Beyond that, clamming is open 4 months of the year. 2 months in the spring, 2 months in the fall. 2 days a week during those months. Saturdays and Wednesdays, I believe. It's in the off season. There's no parking issues in the off season for clammers, guys. There's plenty of room. They can park anywhere, from south of the crossover to the fishing hole to the crossover area. Plenty of parking. So that's not an issue. So I have trouble with this parking issue. Is it worth kicking a man out of his house for 6 parking spots that really aren't that practical? Isn't that practical to begin with? Beyond that, the Macy Cottage, which was bought by the town several years back. It was fondly known as the Orr House. It's just north of the day parking area. Familiar with that. That was bought by the town. The gentleman that owned it passed away. His family didn't want it, and they sold it to what I think was a fairly attractive price for the town. And they bought it. And part of the sell on that was that it would be used for parking because it was adjacent to the day parking area. It was due north. It's right there. Perfect spot. They tore the house down. It was a little cabin, one of the few that was worse than mine. And they tore it down, and the DPW did it. They did a wonderful job. They graded it beautifully, nice natural grade. They did a beautiful job. Then they put rocks lining the roadway where the driveway used to be, and it was never utilized for parking. Made great habitat. As a matter of fact, this past year, there was a plover nest that set up in there, and that was actually the biggest block during the summer months. That triggered the walkthroughs. And I'm not against endangered species at all. Quite the contrary. If you told me my house was the perfect spot for an endangered species that was not going to survive without habitat, again, I'd say, you know what, let's talk about this because I think you're on the right track. But parking, for the reasons given, I don't see it. I just don't see it. So, I'm here tonight. I don't have many options. You can revisit this within yourselves. I could look into litigation. I've spoken with an attorney. I don't want to do that. I'm not that guy. I don't want to do that. It's going to cost me money that I don't have. It's going to cost you folks money that I'm paying for anyways. Doesn't make sense to me. But I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to rule anything out. I'm 60 years old, living out that beach year-round, which is what I do. It's not a summer cottage. It's my home. I've lived there for 23, 24 years. It's my home. I'm 60 years old, as I said. I don't have many good years out there. 3, 4. I don't think I've got 5 years left in me out there. It's tough in the winter. People think it's a cakewalk out there that I'm living on this beautiful beach, and it is. And it's beautiful in the winter as well. But let me tell you, there's been some storms. There's been some situations. I've been buried out there for 4 or 5 days at a whack and not been able to get off. Had to dig my own way out. Had to come back with my own equipment when I got out and clear the entire beach, not just for myself, but for the other homeowners that are out there, so they can check on their cottage. Never once did I call the DPW for help. Never once. I can take care of it, no problem. I know they got important things to deal with. There's no reason for them to come out there for one person. So I don't think I've been a bad entity out there. The other thing I want to mention is the other cottages out there that are leased, or the other properties that are leased. And one is the Sparks Cottage, which is the large white home, vinyl-sided, that's out there, which Mr. Sparks, John Sparks, great man, claims he owns the land. The town claims they own it. This has been in litigation since he bought it from the Sawyers, and it's never been cleaned up. No one knows. We don't know if John Sparks owns the property. He claims he does. Town claims they do. I think some house cleaning needs to be done there. And if the town does own that land, why are they not looking at his property? There's been nothing there? Is it simply because he hasn't paid his taxes? Or is it more parking? Well, he has paid his taxes, excuse me. Is that the only reason that you're basically not renewing this lease, is because I've been late? Or is it both, or what? Why isn't Sparks being addressed? Then again, we have Sandy's, the third lease property out there, which is an entirely different entity. I understand that. It's a commercial business. But she was allowed to just sell the place recently. Good for her. They ran a great business down there. But they didn't have problems with their lease. And they were able to keep the place and sell it at a profit. I'm not losing everything that I've put into that house, the cost what I've purchased it for. But it's going to probably cost me $20,000 to get that house destroyed and taken off that beach, trying to get dumpsters out there and do it. I talked to Barry Tassinari. He told me between $15,000 and $20,000 is what it's going to cost me. And that's if I do the work, much of the work myself. And you know what? I'll be the only one that's going to tear that house down. It'll be me, not a contractor. So as I said, my options are you people revisit this and take a look at it. Maybe come up with some creative option. I'm open for that, as I said in my letter that I sent to you earlier in the year. I would have loved to have had this meeting before you made the vote, but it's not the case. Like I said, I've only got 4 or 5 good years out there, and I'm not going to stay out there much longer than that. But I'm going to lose all my equity, all my investment, and it's going to cost me money to get that cottage off. And to me, that's just wrong. It's just wrong. I'm gonna give you one more quick story. And I'm sorry I'm taking up your time. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say, but I'm going to give you just a quick story. It may not seem pertinent initially, but I think it is. I think it is. So if you don't mind, I'm going to tell you the story about some friends of mine from Arkansas, a family from Arkansas that I've known for many years. A single mom and her son. They've been coming out to visit me for over 24 years, 24 years. The first time they came, the young man was in this woman's womb. And every year after that, this young man has come to the beach and spent anywhere from a month to 2 weeks during the summer months. Came again in the fall a few times, in the winter a few times. I watched this young boy build sandcastles. From sandcastles, he went to sand cities. And the sand cities had always had a town hall. They always had a school. They always had a recycling facility. And he'd set them up so the water would come in and there'd be destruction and devastation. And it was always interesting to watch this little young engineer develop these things. As the years went on, he got older. He would walk the beach. He would walk the mud flats and come back with treasures, absolute treasures, and a million questions. A million questions. I don't have children, so this was a great thrill for me. We talked about a lot of things. I taught him how to fish, how to catch stripers, how to catch blues. I taught him how to navigate, how to read a nautical map, how to take a chart with a compass and take a bearing and follow it. We would take the nautical chart and look at sunken ships in the harbor. There are sunken ships in this harbor. And we'd go out at low tide, paddle out there in a kayak and try to locate them using the compass. He became very good at it. When he caught a fish, I taught him how to clean it, how to fillet a fish. Put it on the grill and cook it, prep it and cook it. And he got nothing, didn't enjoy anything more. Every year he looked forward to coming down, catching a fish and cooking it for his mom and myself. Taught him how to get sea clams. Same thing in the winter. He would go and get some sea clams and bring it in, and he learned to make a very good chowder. He was quite proud of it. He got involved in scouting, and some of his badges were earned on that beach. Some of his high school projects, he'd call me and say, "Can you send me a horseshoe crab and a fiddler crab?" And I would do these things. Send him a box of sand every Christmas. And he carried that information, he carried that knowledge of beach back to his Midwestern town in Arkansas. I told him when he started scouting that if he ever made Eagle Scout, I'd be there for him. I'd be there for that ceremony. And, of course, the little bugger did. He made Eagle Scout. And Eagle Scouts are very special people. in my opinion, they tend to be the cream of the crop. So I went down to Arkansas. I flew down there to honor that young boy. And down in the Midwest, they take their scouting pretty seriously, and it was quite a show they put on for him. And it was in town hall, right in his town hall. His parents were there, his uncles were there, his family was there, relatives were there, selectmen were there from the town. It was quite impressive. And they pinned that eagle pin on him, and I was quite proud of him. Everybody was. They also addressed the parents and put the parent pin on them, because it is said that no one makes Eagle Scout without good family and friends. And there he was. They gave him the microphone, and he had to speak for a few minutes, talk about what got him there. And he talked about Plymouth Beach. He talked about the town of Plymouth. He talked about Thanksgivings here, because he spent many Thanksgivings here, and the history. He talked about the Native American demonstrations during Thanksgiving. He talked about ecology. He talked about geology. He talked about endangered species. Very promising young man. And then he called me up to the podium, and he stuck this pin right here on my lapel. It's called a mentor pin. And I don't think I've ever been that proud of a human being in my entire life. Before me, I watched a young boy become a young man, and I was honored. I was honored to be there. So why am I telling you this story? It's really quite simple. This board right here has 2 Eagle Scouts on it, and that's quite an honor. Quite an honor, both of you and to this town. We're very fortunate. Eagle Scouts make great leaders. It's a known fact. Great humanitarians. It's a known fact. And we should be proud of that. We're very fortunate, all of us, to have them here. But the way the situation came down, I can't help but not understand and be upset, because the bottom line is my house is being taken for either the reason of being a month or so late on my taxes or for parking, which doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe I'm a simpleton. It just doesn't. Sorry. So I urge this board to revisit that vote whenever you want. There's no rush. I'll also offer you, if you want to have a tour of that beach, and we can look at parking issues, we can look at my house, my property. I'll provide transportation. I'll take you out there and give you a tour that no one else in this town will give you. Just say when. That's a standing offer. I'll give you a tour. But that said, I urge this board to reconsider their vote. And for you, John, I think it would behoove you at the end of the day when you go home to get out your Eagle Scout pledge and read it. That's what I think. Thank you, folks, for your time. Good night.
Thank you. Mr. Withington, did you wish to speak?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Withington. I served on the Conservation Commission with John. He came aboard. I've been on about 5 years, and he came on. I think in 1 year I learned more about conservation from him than I ever did with the 5 years previous to that. Only thing I want to address, I have friends who have cottages out on Beach Point. I think in my lifetime and in John's lifetime, I can't count the number of times that people have said, "Oh yeah, I remember him. He was the guy who pulled me out of the sand dune. Oh yeah, he was the guy that had some gas. I ran out of gas." On and on and on. He did more than just live out there. He kind of protected that beach for everyone. I hope you let him live in that house for the rest of the year. Thanks.
Any other? Yes, Mr. Gray?
Good evening. Good evening. Hi. John kind of took some of my lines here. I was going to start off with the fact that he's probably the only resident in town that lives on a town road that never called for a plow or somebody to fix his street. But it's the truth. I've known John for a long time. I can speak to his incredible integrity. I wanted him to join the town so that we could rebuild the tree department. And he balked and balked and balked to the point that I finally had to threaten to take hostages if he didn't apply. I didn't have to take hostages. He did. Excellent job. There'd be hard-pressed to find someone that cares for the beach more than John does. He has shown it for years and years and years. But I want to speak to that second lease, the possibility of it. We had a meeting a year ago. I brought information in to members of the board. We met. I'm curious as to what has been done to research it. I think it's premature to end this lease without knowing whether there's a second lease out there. I don't think it's fair. Tardiness in paying. How many taxpayers are late on their tax bills? You know, it isn't good, but it happens. But I think the lease issue is critical. What you do to one lease, you do to two leases, if it's for the health of the beach. I don't think there's anything that is so critical right now for the health of that beach that somebody who has lived there called it his home for over 20 years. I think it can wait. I think it should wait until this other issue is finally resolved. It may cost a lot of money, but the town has to do it. I'm going to stay on it. Anyway, I also hope you reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. We've taken quite a bit of time tonight out of the docket time because a citizen is entitled to come in and make a statement, especially involving their home. And we've had people over the years that have done this. And I have to say that in sitting in this room on and off for 20 years, that I've heard a lot of people speak, and Sometimes the truth is stretched, and sometimes some things are left out. But I know that the statements that were made tonight were accurate. I've known Mr. Scaglarini, Skag, for more years than I can remember. I also had the honor of knowing the young man that he was talking about. Saw him when he was about 5 years old running down the beach. And I got to see him a year ago as he was leaving to go on a European holiday and was in college. So I know that all of these stories are not exaggerated. The board has options. The vote that was taken was there were 4 members of the board present. It was a 3-1 vote. And this board has the option to go back and revisit, its decision. It's my responsibility as the chair to move matters forward in an orderly way. I'm not going to ask the board to reconsider anything tonight. That's something that is their prerogative and only theirs. But if anyone wishes to make a statement tonight from the board, you're certainly entitled to do so. And if you want to consider action, you can do that tonight or at some other time, or you don't have to do it at all because the vote has been taken and recorded. Those are the options. So at this point, I'm going to ask if any members of the board wish to speak. If not, then I'll continue on with the docket, and I thank those that were here this evening, for coming in. Do you want to say something, sir? Okay, if you may identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Thomas Duran. I've lived in Plymouth all my life.
I'm sorry, Mr. Duran. I didn't, with the hat on, I didn't recognize you. I know you.
I've known John for over 30 years. I just can't understand how you can make a person that was late on his taxes 36 days, you're making him be evicted, and then you're making him, on top of that, you're making him tear down his house. Either him or the town will do it. And if the town does it, they're going to send him a bill for the time it takes. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, the guy's been a homeowner out there for over 30 years, and to just do that, tell him he's got to leave. It cost him just under $100,000 for that house. I know it needs a lot of work, and he knows that. And if he got a lease for a few years, say 5 years, that he's willing, that he probably will stay out there, he'll put some money into that house and make it look a little bit better. But to do what you people are doing isn't right. I'd like to know how many houses or homeowners in the town of Plymouth that own a house. They've had it for almost 30 years. You evict them, tell them they have to remove their house or you're going to charge them to have it removed. I don't think there's anybody in here that can tell me that's been done before.
And that won't happen here, sir. I don't know where that came from. That is completely inaccurate.
Well, that's what I heard. But anyway, I just don't think it's right to make a person that's been out there for 30 years to make a move. And you're going to tear his place down so you can put in 3 or 4 parking spaces. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Yes, Selectman Joyce.
Mr. Scaglione, if I could ask you a couple of questions. I'm a new person on the board. So I was elected in May, and off and on over the years, I've been in Plymouth for 14 years. I've watched the selectmen's meetings. 5-6 years ago, not sure of the exact date, I saw a lot of conversations. So from my understanding, lateness was not something that was new. It was 5, 6, 7 years ago. I don't have all the tax bills. So as a business owner, if I could ask you a couple of questions, do you have you said you employ 3 or 4 people depending upon the season of the tree cutting season?
Yes, I mean, we work year-round.
Okay.
Sometimes in the spring, which is an exceptionally busy season, in the fall, which is exceptionally busy, I put an extra person on.
So if I could ask you a couple of questions about that. I don't have the exact terms of, sometimes you might have been 30 days late, and other times I thought much more than that, months, maybe years. When you have people employed working for you, do you pay them late, 6 months or a year? Do you pay them on time?
I pay them on time because they keep me going.
Okay.
Absolutely pay them on time.
So, and one of the other citizens in the sitting down who just came up and spoke. Okay, I'm sure other people have been late in their taxes. I don't want to sound like what my mother used to say in terms of, well, if one does it, it's not okay. In terms of, is it right for everybody to do it? If everybody didn't pay their taxes on time, there'd probably be a revenue stream problem. So that argument, I can appreciate it. I've heard you're a wonderful steward of the beach. I've been out there with my husband. It's a beautiful area. But my feeling is if the taxes are due, the taxes are due. And the finance director and the tax collector are in the audience in terms of, I have no idea how many hours they've spent on this over the years. And that's a resource and that's a drag on the town. And I don't feel as though that's a good use of the town's resources.
I hear you, Sheila. Going back to my help, yes, they're the first ones that get paid. They get paid before I do. Small businesses cash flow sometimes is tough. My help gets paid before I do. My help, my insurances, fuel for the trucks, all that stuff gets paid before I do. Oftentimes, my help makes more money than I do at the end of the year. And you're right. Taxes have to be paid, and I have acknowledged that. I have worked on it. I have been, as I said, I've been current or ahead for over a year now. I'm making an effort. In the past, yes, it was poor, no doubt. And I'm not asking. I've had some people speak about my character, and that's not the case here. I know that. That's not the issue here. I know that. And I gave you a little bit of my history for you and Sean or people that might not know me that well. And it's not because I think I need special treatment. I don't need special treatment. I don't want special treatment. It's completely the contrary. I want to be treated like everybody else. I think Tommy Dern was trying to articulate, what happens to other people. Well, and it's a good point. A lot of people in this town are late on their taxes. A lot later than I have been in the last 5 years. They're not facing, granted it's a different situation, but they're not facing losing their home. They're not facing that. Sometimes mortgage companies give them a financial penalty. And they pay that and they go back to their daily life. This disrupts my entire world. And that needs to be seen. You need to understand that too. I'm a human being. Put yourself in my shoes, any of you, and try to envision it. But like I said, you have a business to run here, and you have to do what you have to do. You have to sleep with yourself at night, as I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Provenzano.
To follow on to that, this is not a tax bill. It's a lease payment. If it was a tax bill, it would be easier because it would be a delinquent tax bill, as there are many delinquent tax bills. But this is a lease payment. So when this thing goes late, it ties up the third floor. It ties up staff time in a way that a late tax payment doesn't. It may have been no more than 36 days late in its last iteration, but there's a file that thick with lawyer letters, with staff time, a tremendous amount of time to collect a rent that is based upon what the tax bill would be if it were privately owned property. So essentially, you've been given an incredible advantage. You've been allowed to rent town property essentially for free because all you pay is what the tax bill would have been. There's no rent on top of that. So for a pittance that the town receives, we now have to chew up enormous amounts of staff time to chase you. And that fundamentally is the problem for me. Mr. Scaglarino, there's a file this thick. How far does it go back? I don't. Nevertheless, I don't think that's justification. I just don't. What's the gravity of what you do? I just don't see it.
Further comments or questions from the board? Then we will go on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you. I'm sorry. I can't have any more discussion. This is between Mr. Scaglarini and the board. If he has some other questions or comments, I'll take that. But or if the board does, but I can't take any more public comments at this time. Okay. Thank you. The next item on the agenda are the licenses. The first is Bramhall's Country Store, and they're requesting a one-day wine and malt license for November 18th at the Country Store. EC Event Management requesting a one-day wine and malt license at Studio G, November 12th. And Kristen Merlin requesting a one-day wine and malt license for a concert at Memorial Hall on November 12th from 4:30 to 9:30 p.m. If you so desire, one motion may be taken. To the motion, discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? It is unanimous. At this time, I'm going to ask the Finance Director, Ms. Barrett, to come up and discuss the administrative note in regards to the bond refunding. Lynn?
Thank you, Chairman. Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance. Here with me tonight is Pamela Bugatti, our Treasurer-Collector. Would like to give you some background on the general obligation refunding bonds that you are voting and signing tonight. I may be a little long-winded, but